Tonight we slip into the forgotten rhythm of women grinding hope into flour, bartering whispers for salt, and sewing daylight shut. Boring history perfect for dozing off. Sweet dreams and drift gently with me. Soft torchlight quivers along the timbered ceiling, and a hush settles like warming wool over your shoulders, inviting calm to curl its fingers around the last alert corners of your mind. The night is slow, generous, and here only for you. Before you sink deeper into the pillow, brush a soft tap on like. If these hushed tales soothe you, let's subscribe. Quietly follow. Leave me a quiet clue, a whisper of what your city is known for, but don't name it. I'll guess where you're listening from. As we map the night together, ease the lights low. Let the hum of a fan or gentle breeze keep you company. We'll begin when you're ready. Let the glow of your screen dim to ember orange. Each pixel sighs and steps back, the way coals settle when a poker is finally laid aside. Your breathing evens out, matching the patient rhythm of distant crickets, those careful custodians of countryside silence. Perhaps you notice the faint scent of something herbal, imagined rosemary, maybe lavender, lingering at the edge of the room. Let it drift nearer, gentle as smoke rising from an unseen censer, threading soft spirals through the cool air until the memory of daylight feels very far away. Outside, aging shingles mumble against a half-hearted breeze, promising that whatever stories unfold tonight will stay tucked beneath the eaves. The world has folded in on itself for safekeeping. In that quiet pocket, our whisper history can bloom without hurry or fuss. So nestle in, spine loose, jaw light, thoughts unclenched, like petals at dusk. Nothing presses for answers now. Timelines may shuffle themselves while you wander half awake among them. All you must do is listen, drift, and let sleep approach at its own deliberate pace, confident that the tale will stand guard until dawn. In the pearl gray hush, before sunrise, you wake to the cold smell of last night's ashes. The cottage is still, save for a sighing rafter and the distant mutter of a cock who rose too early. A chill nibbles at your toes as you tiptoe toward the handquern, that squat circle of stone, waiting like a silent judge on the bench. One oil lamp trembles against the gloom. Its faint flame paints the grain pile in soft bronze, promising bread if you earn it. Your palms find the top stone's wooden handle, worn smooth by generations of dawns. Every groove a quiet tally of survival. You breathe once, twice, steadying your arms to your heartbeat, then press. Grit meets grit. The first turn groans through the hush, rattling a sleepy beetle from a crack in the wall. Kernels tumble into the eye of the quern and burst beneath unseen weight. Dust rises, honest, earthy, smelling of fields you scarcely remember seeing in daylight. A faint memory returns as you grind, your mother's voice guiding the same circle, the same steady pull, telling you that every kernel carries a season of storms and sunshine within it. Honor the seed, she said. It once stood braver than any night against wind and crow. The lesson lingers, rich and steady, in the circular song of stone on stone. The stone circles again, easier now. Your shoulders settle into the familiar ache, a dull warmth that pushes away the morning cold. Each rotation is a bargain, grain for muscle, hope for soreness. Outside, the sky pales like watered ink. You imagine other cottages stirring, other women matching your pace without ever meeting, an invisible chorus grinding the kingdom awake. The thought feels companionable, like catching a skirt hem in another's elbow at mass. Minutes pass, or perhaps a lifetime. The lamp sputters, complaining of its own hunger. You pause to add a sip of oil, and in that softened glow, inspect the meal collecting below. It is fine, almost silken, streaked with the occasional stubborn hull you will sift out later. This is the difference between a loaf that rises proud and one that sulks against the hearthbrick. You pinch the flour, the grit is nearly gone. Good. The Lord Steward might grumble if bread weighs light, but he cannot stomach waste. and neither can you. Yet beyond the steward's reach lies your true ledger, the faces round your board, a laughable board, really. 3 stools and a scarred plank, but precious in its certainty. Your youngest will scrape that plank clean, chasing crumbs as though they were lost pearls. Such images press you forward. You add another scoop of grain, feel the handle bite harder, and turn. Stone speaks to stone, guiding thoughts toward debts. Wood to gather, herbs to steep, small coins to stretch. At last, the pile of flour swells like drifted snow. You straighten, spine crackling, dusting white ghosts from your skirt. Dawn slips through the window slit, touching the flour with a blush of gold. For a moment, the cottage resembles a chapel, grinding stone the altar, lamp the votive flame. You, the quiet priestess of dough and duty. You funnel the meal into a linen sack, knotting its mouth with a practiced tug. The ache in your arms hums, but there is no time to nurse it. Thirst pricks your throat. The well bucket sits empty in the corner, accusing. Water must be fetched. Beyond the hedge, a stream murmurs secrets in fog. The path is muddy, the gossip quick. You sling the sack over your shoulder, its weight settling like a promise of evening bread, and step toward the door where cool light waits. Outside, the first bird note slips into the clearing, urging you onward. Flour clings to your fingertips, turning every breath of wind into a whisper of chaff. Tomorrow's hunger has been quieted, but today's thirst sharpens, calling you to the water's edge, where rumors ripple faster than trout, and morning light glints off every careless word. The door latch sighs as you step outside, and dawn's chill brushes your cheeks like wet silk. Mist drapes the hedgerows, pearling every spider thread, until the world seems strung with quiet pearls. A wooden yoke settles across your shoulders, rough, reassuring, while 2 empty pails knock together in time with your pulse. Grass, still jeweled with last night's dew, darkens your hem, and each breath arrives crisp as bitten apple. Somewhere nearby, a cow coughs awake, barn swallows dart, and the horizon begins its slow, rose-petaled stretch toward daylight. You follow the trodden path to the stream, boots squelching in mud that remembers every footfall. Scholars later will claim medieval women never traveled far. Yet each dawn you walk farther than many nights ride before breakfast. The stream lies a quarter-mile on, convenient only on parchment maps. Through thin fog you recognize silhouettes. Agnes with her sharp elbows, Maud humming psalm fragments, 2 village lads dicing pebbles for luck. Water gathering, everyone agrees, is woman's work, so the men linger just beyond duty's edge, fishing for rumor rather than trout. At the bank, the water mutters over stones, mirror still in the bends. You kneel, sleeves rolled, and plunge a pail beneath the surface. Cold needles race up your arms. As the bucket fills, Agnes leans in, voice hushed. They say the Lord's reeve counted oxen twice and pocketed the tithe. You answer with a knowing tilt of the chin. Silence, the safest currency. Another woman shares that a traveling friar blamed last month's rain on women's vanity. Everyone chuckles, rolling eyes at recycled sermons. Myth medieval women were mute under patriarchy's thumb. Fact, the stream's edge is parliament, marketplace, confession booth, and stage, all disguised as chore. You heft the full pail onto the bank and swap sides of the yoke. Muscles protest, yet routine flattens the ache into something almost musical. On the walk back, you test the water's surface tension. Move too quickly, and it sloshes out, costing precious ladles later. Move too slowly, and gossip catches up, sticky as burrs. Midway, Maud asks if anyone remembers last autumn's sickness. She heard the herb woman recommends mint, not mugwort, this year. Advice flows as freely as the stream, braided with laughter, spiked with caution. You offer your own tidbit. Boil water twice, when thunder follows harvest, else fevers linger. It's a trick learned from an older cousin, herself taught by a manor cook who once served a leper knight. Wisdom ripples outward, never wasted. By the time cottages reappear, pails slosh only at the brim. You pause to watch dawn finish painting the thatch roof's bronze, thinking how many historians will later imagine women trapped indoors, ignoring these early pilgrimages that bind a village tighter than any charter. Your wet skirts shiver. You shift the yoke, admire the simple engineering. 2 carved notches keep the rope from sliding, a design likely older than the nearest chapel. Innovation hides in plain sight, often in women's hands. Back inside, you lower the buckets near the hearth. Water, clear as spun glass, waits for porridge, washing, and dough that must rise by moon high. You wipe your palms on homespun and savor the hush before the next task. Outside, hammer blows ring faintly from the blacksmith shed. Bent iron needs mending before evening stew can hang safely. Your gaze flicks to the crooked hearth tools leaning beside the firestone, tongs with a cracked joint, poker warped by last winter's flame. They cannot mend themselves. You lift the empty yoke once more, settling it by the door, and let your shoulders roll beneath wool. The water's weight has eased, replaced by the steady throb of responsibility shifting shape. Sparks are already flying somewhere beyond the cottage fence, and you will soon stand beneath them, bargaining muscle and patience against glowing metal. The blacksmith's shed exhales a sleepy plume of charcoal breath. As you step inside, lantern flame, shivering amber across, soot-glazed beams. Warm iron tang tickles your nose. Embers purr under bellows, throwing coppery ghosts against the walls. A crooked poker and one-armed pair of tongs dangle from your grip, clinking a nervous prelude while dew still pearls your lashes. The air glows viscous, syrup thick, with heat and possibility, and wood smoke threads your hair like an accidental perfume. Every sense sharpens, struck bright as the first hammer blow. Osric the smith nods without words, accepting your tools onto the anvil's scarred altar. His hammer rises, then pauses, awaiting your footing on the treadle that feeds the bellows. You plant a boot, calves flexing, and the forge roars awake, sparks fountain upward, momentary stars in a private sky. Sparks fly faster than village gossip. Truest punchline yet. Osric grunts approval. Scholars will someday insist that women kept strictly to wools and kettles, never daring the forge, but here your foot controls the dragon's breath, while his hammer merely guides the glow. Iron softens to honey red. Osric taps the poker's bent shank, each measured ring answering questions only he can hear. You study the metal's blush, reading heat the way monks read rubricated margins. When the color tips toward orange, you swing the bellows slower. The metal is ready, not greedy. Together you and the smith move like 2 gears in a hidden clock. Push, strike, turn, quench, syncopated music, older than any chapel hymn. A hiss erupts. As the poker dives into the barrel, steam dances up, tasting of ash and river water. You remember your mother cooling blades for harvest, sleeves singed, but eyes bright, insisting that tempering wasn't men's mystery, but family insurance. Myth bust, quietly delivered. Women handled hot iron whenever survival required, nicking no pride from the men who boasted louder. History will later polish knights' helms and priestly chalices, yet overlook the humble hearth hook, keeping supper from burning. Still, you know, the ember-lit truth feels steady in your bones. Tongs next. The hinge gap yawns like a toothless grin. Osric slots a wedge of glowing scrap within, signal for you to tread harder. The forge flares, salt white at its heart. Hammer meets metal in a drum roll. Scale flakes off like black snow. You chant inwardly. Turn, strike, cool. A mantra syncing breaths with blows. Somewhere outside, hens squabble over crumbs. But within these walls time loops on itself, each strike echoing seasons before and after. Sweat beads at your temple, evaporating faster than fear. When the hinge finally closes true, you plunge the tongs into the quench, and a sharp hiss answers like applause, withheld all morning. Osric inspects the joint, tests the bite, supposes they'll last another winter. Payment? He gestures toward a small heap of nail blanks, wages in potential shape. You pocket them gladly. Nails mend roofs, cradle ladders, pin coffins, currency as versatile as salt. As you thank him, he offers a lump of slag for the herb woman's poultice. Even waste finds purpose here. You step into daylight, blinking, heat ghosts still skating your vision. Hearth tools clink, renewed notes against one another, ready to cradle kettles and steer logs. A robin trills overhead, stitching bright thread through the smoky silence you carry in your lungs. Across the lane, thatch catches sun like spun gold. Inside your cottage, cooled water waits to rinse soot from your fingers before dough demands kneading. Yet for a breath you linger, feeling the subtle hum of mended iron against your palm. A low, trustworthy promise. In the hush between tasks, the village itself seems to inhale, preparing for market chatter and barley transactions. You shoulder the lengthened poker, tongs tucked beneath your arm, and trace sparks that still flit on the edge of eyesight. They fade into memory just as the cottage door swings open, welcoming you back with the smell of fresh ground flour and the faint creak of an empty cradle upstairs. Soon the day's rhythm will slow, and in that slackening, you may drift half awake, wandering smoky kitchens of recollection, where tools glow without flame, and laughter rings soft as spoon taps on clay bowls. But first, water must warm, dough must rise, and your pulse must settle from forged tempo to hearth hush. Step inside, let shadows seal the threshold, while outside embers dim, readying the mind for quieter dreams beyond the anvil's song. In the half-lit hush between breaths, you find yourself drifting beside the hand quern again. Though your body remains tucked beneath a blanket, the stone turns by its own slow will, circles widening, tightening, widening once more, as if mapping a forgotten route through dawn. Flour dust floats upward in gentle spirals, each mote glowing like a sleepy firefly, and the smell of warm grain settles over you in a thin, comforting veil. The scene blurs, and suddenly dew beads cool against your bare ankles, though the bed straw still cradles your heels. Mist hangs low over an invisible stream. Its soft rush hums inside your chest, matching the lull of your heartbeat. You hear distant laughter, women's voices plucking at ripples, yet the words fade to sweetness on the tongue before silence folds them away. A faint metallic chorus flares next, not startling, but shimmering, as if sparks could sing lullabies. Heat passes close without touching, leaving only the memory of orange light behind your eyelids. You sense iron yielding, hammer whispering cadence, bellows breathing like a giant hearth cat. The air smells of charcoal and summer storms, even while cool night persists along your arms. All at once, these fragments mingle. Flower motes drift over water, mist braids into smoke, and a single ember settles upon the stream without sizzle. In this half-awake country, logic obeys the soft law of dreams. Everything may touch everything. Nothing burns, nothing drowns. You hover, weightless, witnessing textures instead of shapes. Silk rough haze, velvet ash, linen breath, grainy twilight. Time slips sideways. The quern's slow revolution becomes the earth's, then your own drowsy pulse, then perhaps the turning of a distant star. You exhale, and the world releases with you. Inhale, and motes realign into new constellations. Somewhere a cock crows, but the sound arrives muffled, swallowed by moss. Echoes doze in hollows of fog. No task calls your name here. Not yet. A hush deeper than any chapel settles. Even memory walks barefoot, careful not to disturb the stillness. You sense the outline of the cottage. Rough timber, latched door, hearth embers, muttering secrets, yet see none of it. Instead you feel textures at unmoving fingertips. The worn quern handle, the rope of the water yoke, the blistered grain of the bellows tread. Each carries a tiny warmth, like an ember stored for later use. Somewhere overhead, unseen swallows slice the gray with feather-light wings, their arcs traced only by the brief tremble of air across your cheeks. You sense them without sight, tiny guardians, stitching the quilt of mist closed above, ensuring calm within. Their wing beats, Brush away any thought that might sharpen. What remains is rounded and gentle, like river stones that have long forgotten edges. Even the future seems smoothed, its unknown curves dulled until they fit within an easy palm. Gradually, breath elongates, spreading cool over your ribs. Muscles loosen, lids sink. The quern slows until it rests. Water stills to glass. Hammer echoes fade into woolen hush. A last fragrant sigh of grain drifts through dream air, then disperses into nothing. You lie weightless, atop the mingled scents, as though floating on a quilt sewn from flour, mist, and ash. There is no hurry to return. Outside, real shutters may creak, dogs may bark, day may beckon, yet they seem distant as clouds beyond a mountain pass. In this twilight pocket, you are granted one more gentle drift, one more unmeasured pause, while the knitted hush mends every thin thread of worry stretched through waking hours. And so you linger, balanced on the cool cusp of morning, neither fully here nor there, held by textures alone. When the dream's pulse finally loosens its grip, you will wake slowly to a world softened by remembrance, flour easier to grind, water lighter to carry, iron warmer to hold. But for now, you simply breathe and let the hush carry you a little farther downstream towards sleep. The village green greets you like a patchwork quilt still cool from night air, damp grass pressing its chill through rough soles as sunrise spills honey over stalls. Spices flutter from a distant cart, pepper, anise, saffron, mingling with onion skins and wool lanolin, until the scent feels both exotic and domestic. Laughter crackles beneath thatched awnings. Geese protest their own sale, flapping like white flags of surrender. Coins ring, dogs yip, and somewhere a fiddle tests two tentative notes, then thinks better of waking the world before bread is sold. As you weave between crates of turnips, crusted with loam and bolts of rough-spun cloth, villagers drift past in tides of hush and chatter. A baker tilts yesterday's loaves into a basket, their hollow thumps syncing with your steps. The rhythm slips into your spine, coaxing breath to lengthen until fatigue surrenders its grip. You adjust the basket on your hip, feeling onions settle against barley cakes wrapped in cloth. The modest inventory you hope to trade for a knot of salt and perhaps a ribbon scrap. Market days are calendars stitched into memory. Each face marks a season, each stall a weather change. Kettle's apple bench predicts frost by the blush on skins, while the fuller's vats bubble louder when storms brew. You read these signs as faithfully as clerks read psalms. Beneath a striped awning, a spice peddler unfurls his ledger of scents. You offer 2 onions, still wearing their soil freckles, for a modest scoop of salt. He counters with 3 and a smile, aimed sideways at the Reeves clerk. You add 1 barley cake and meet his eyes until silence thickens like unrendered lard. Myth insists medieval women haggled only over eggs, yet here you stand, negotiating the mineral that guards winter lungs. At last, he nods, tipping salt into cloth, secure in the knowledge that trade has teeth and courtesy in equal measure. Agnes, your dawn companion, barters knitted mitts for a candle stub. 2 stalls down, gossip darts between her words. Like house sparrows, rumors of a hidden tithe, whispers of a Reeves second ledger. A monk recording dues, dips quill to ink, eyes weighing purses more than souls. Later scholars will quote his book and speak of silent, powerless women. They will miss the margin note. Annette refused payment, claims shroud already woven. Courage seldom fits tidy footnotes. A gust lifts canvas overhead, scattering dust that glitters like the flour you ground at dawn. You tuck the salt pouch deep in your kirtle and trade a promise for tomorrow, hops for ribbon if yields run high. Agreements float unseen, stitching seasons together. When you step away, the peddler's grin lingers, not flirtation, but recognition that commerce here favors minds quick and steady. Somewhere near the fountain, a traveling jongleur coaxes a low melody from a harp. The notes glide through the crowd like cool thread through a warm seam. Mothers sway with babies, dogs tilt ears, and for a breath or two the coin clatter syncs so neatly with the tune that even the monk's stern quill pauses, suspended in gentle wonder. Shadows lengthen beneath a lone sycamore, where you pause, letting rough bark cool against your back, while the market's racket softens to a wool-lined murmur. Wind shakes leaves overhead, their dappled patterns dancing like coins on a hidden string. For a heartbeat, the pouch's weight and unspent laughter feel lighter than the ribbon you never bought. The hush reminds you that profit is only a doorway. Tonight salt will season porridge, and if fevers rise, seal herb broth against spoil. Beyond the cooper's barrels, the herb woman's pot is already steaming, its bitter scent curling through the bustle like a quiet warning. You ease back into motion, footsteps measured, ready to swap grains of salt for sprigs of sage, and learn whether the next trade tastes of cure or rumor. A fragrant hush folds around the cottage the moment you lift the iron-rimmed pot onto the hearthstone. Steam curls upward, fogging the rafters with mint-laced warmth, while logs settle with a mellow sigh. Outside, dawn's glimmer still clings to dew, but within these walls light is green-tinted, filtered through bundles of chamomile, yarrow, and wormwood, dangling like upside-down pennants of survival. The mixture before you simmers into a pond-soft mirror, reflecting firelight and the tilt of your intent. Herbs, medieval smoothies, just grittier. You pinch dried elderflower between thumb and forefinger, releasing a sugar pollen scent that sweetens the air. Petals drift across the surface, then vanish beneath a slow whirl, as though agreeing to secrecy. Your hands move calmly, measuring by memory alone. 3 sprigs of horehound for cough, 1 sliver of licorice for stubborn throats, a whisper of nettle because iron hides in its sting. The smell thickens, part meadow, part apothecary, faintly bitter, yet promising ease. Heat quickens the brew's heartbeat, and you adjust the pot so bubbles rise with steady patience rather than frantic haste. A gentle roll of your neck loosens the last tether of morning tension. Breath widens, limbs soften, and steam paints your cheeks with moist tranquility. Stories claim only monks knew medicine, yet generations of mothers mapped remedies on muscle memory. Treating fevers without permission slips from parchment scholars. When plague brushed this valley last spring, it was women who brewed hope in ladles, while clerics inked laments. From the shelf you take powdered myrrh, dear precious, trafficked by caravans you may never see. A single pinch clouds the liquid amber, sinking like dusk into river shallows. You remember tales of queens embalmed with this same resin, yet here it is, humbled to soothe winter sores. The thought hums with quiet power. Empire and cottage meet in the mouth of the same spoon. Minutes drift. Patience becomes ritual. Stir clockwise, 3 circles. Taste the spoon tip, noting heat, not flavor. Too sharp. Add rose hips. Too dull. A thread of sage. Beyond the door, geese scold fresh gossip, their honks braided with forge rhythm and market chatter, carried on breeze. The village orchestra tunes for another workday, but your corner remains an intimate alcove, scented and slow. When the liquid coats the spoon like melted amber, you ladle it through linen into a clay pitcher. Threads of herbs catch in the cloth, leaving the decoction clear enough for candlelight to shine through. Steam lifts alongside memories. Your grandmother blowing across this very cup, cooling hope for a feverish sibling. Your own first successful brew, marveling as sweat broke at dawn. Scholarship may overlook such victories, but healed lungs recite their own psalm. You set the pitcher near the window slit, where a lattice of sun motes can cradle it warm. Beneath the table waits a row of earthen jars, washed and ready, each representing someone's tomorrow. Aged neighbor, restless toddler, even Osric the smith, whose shoulders ache from hammer hymns. You funnel the shimmering liquid, corking each vessel with beeswaxed cloth. Scented wisps cling to fingers, reminding you that gardens grow more than garnish. They grow time, borrowed back from illness. The pot, now empty, retains a ring of gold at its rim, a tiny sunrise, promising the same tomorrow. You rinse it lightly. Water hisses. Steam blurs sight. Then clarity returns. Outside, hurried footsteps crunch gravel. Agnes calls your name, voice buoyed by urgency. Rumor says the Reeves child coughs blood this morning, and riders have gone for a priest. You glance at the row of jars, pulse steady. There is work yet, and maybe hope within corked clay. You wipe your hands on linen, tuck 2 jars into a satchel, and step toward the door where daylight gathers silver on the latch. Hearth, shadows fold behind you, carrying the perfume of mint and myrrh. The door creaks wider than usual, as though making room for possibilities yet unwritten. The noon air quivers with voices, as thin and bright as spun glass. Though sunlight lies warm across the lane, you pause beside the herb bed, skirt brushing thyme blossoms, while distant bells remark the hour in slow iron. On every breeze ride hushed syllables, names, debts, faint sins, fluttering like sparrows beneath the thatch. They dip, rise, and search for an unguarded ear to nest inside. A pewter clasp at your throat glints. Even trinkets become evidence once a tale takes flight. Yesterday, Beth from the South Croft laughed too loudly outside the alehouse, and by dusk the rumor had swollen until it claimed she shared ale with 3 foreign archers. Today you sense that same restless story, prowling near your hedges, testing pickets, like a fox hunting loose boards. You answer, with the oldest armor, useful silence, wrapped in plain-sighted work. A bucket carried, a greeting offered, a pause held one heartbeat longer than need, open enough to soothe suspicion, closed enough to deny purchase. The craft is balance, a dance softer than prayer bells, yet learned younger than psalms. Along the commons, track the Reeves wife and her sister stroll bonnet to bonnet, stitching whispers into a seam too tight for daylight. They halt when the ribbon you bartered this morning peeks from your sleeve. Calm spreads through your ribs, like ember heat through rising dough. May morning finds you well, you offer. Tone level, gait unhurried. Your words settle soft as moss. They absorb, leave no echo. The women nod, unsatisfied, yet forced to swallow rumor without seasoning, and drift on. At the well, 2 matrons spin gossip on invisible wheels. One lifts an eyebrow. Finery travels fast, she murmurs, tapping the ribbon's edge. You smile, then let the pause after her remark stretch a breath longer than comfort, just long enough for the tale to lose flavor. In that gap you lower the bucket. Liquid mirrors quiver, but do not spill. You wish them strength against winter cough, then step aside, skirts whispering, like pages turning. Myth paints medieval women as quarrelsome hens. Truth shows survival hinging on diplomacy, as fine as needlework. Mid-afternoon heat gathers, sweat cools across your nape, loosening muscles that ground grain at dawn. Let your spine lengthen, vertebrae settling like coins in a careful ledger. With each exhale, the village chorus fades, until only wind combs the hedgerow, and cattle low beyond the rye. Agnes finds you beneath the linden, where threadbare shawls trade secrets with leaves. She warns that the steward's clerk tallies reputations as keenly as rents. Together you rehearse rules older than charters, never magnify triumphs, never deny sorrows, never unveil novelty without explanation. You tuck this counsel beside the salt pouch, another tool for evening's reckoning. A crow jeers overhead. For an instant, it sounds like laughter wearing iron shoes. The steward himself soon strides past, ink-stained fingers folded behind his back. He surveys bowed heads, yet misses the silent codes. A broom leaning north, an apron hem folded twice, signals declaring debt settled beyond his parchment. You step aside, letting his shadow skim your toes, heart steady, thoughts cool as cellar stones. Around you gossip spins its relentless thread, yet none of its barbs hook your sleeve. Late light drips amber through cottage shutters, pooling over grain dust, herb jars, and the freshly mended poker. You exhale, calm settles like silt in clear water. Evening draws near, and toil shifts shape. Wax must soften, needles wait, wool begs twisting into quiet patterns. Each neat stitch will pin rumor outside, binding night with wordless promises. Listen, the first owl tests its throat. Beneath the faintest star, candle flames will soon bow. Thread will gleam, and your hands will measure peace, one loop at a time, while distant tongues tire themselves against closed doors. Wax pools in trembling halos on the hearthstone, and a quiet amber hush cloaks the room like feather-soft wool. One stub of tallow stands sentinel against night, flame leaning sideways whenever the draft murmurs through the shutter cracks. Beneath its glow, you settle on a three-legged stool. Linen stretches over your lap, pale as moonlit frost, waiting to become something warmer than worry. Outside, crickets file their evening report, each chirp a soft tick on an invisible clock, marking time until frost tips the thatch in silver. The first thread pulls through cloth with a tiny, satisfying sigh, almost a breath, drawn by the fabric itself, then vanishes into the warp. Pulse slows. Your fingers remember motions older than lullabies. Dip, pierce, lift, tighten. Each neat stitch binds daylight's frayed edges, tucking them safe behind trembling wax light. Myth insists candle hours were idleness. Truth gleams in every practiced loop, trading seconds for warmth when winter prowls the eaves. A hush deepens, thick enough to muffle distant hammer strikes from Osric's shed. Even gossip quiets when thread begins its measured dance. You glance at the tiny flame, its tip blue as new steel. Melted wax creeps downward in lazy rivulets, sculpting stalactites that cool to milky ribbons. The scent, faint animal fat, laced with smoke, anchors you to the bench, grounding the mind as steady as a prayer stone beneath a pilgrim's thumb. With each exhale, shoulders lower, breath widens, and the quiet between heartbeats stretches like softened linen across a frame. Tension unknots behind your lungs. You feel space settle inside the ribcage, gentle and cool. Silk thread, a rare market score, slips smoother than spun water through the weave. Candle glint ignites its surface, throwing tiny sparks of copper and plum. You picture those sparks sewing themselves into the cloak you mend, ready to catch firelight beside a frozen road months from now. The thought whispers comfort. Work done now will travel farther than your footsteps ever might. Scholars may one day catalog distances of crusades and caravans. They will overlook journeys taken by a single mended cloak wrapped around a sleepy child. Stitch follows stitch, forming tidy hills and valleys across the cloth. In the rhythm you count quiet bargains. One ration of salt traded, one jar of tonic delivered, one rumor politely declined. Every loop secures the day's fragile ledger, turning abstract hopes into tangible thread. Ember light flickers across the mended poker leaning nearby, reminding you how sparks once leapt like startled songbirds when iron bent beneath hammer. Heat and metal, wax and thread, different verses of the same survival ballad. A loose ember on the hearth pops, scattering red nubs that fade before they roll an inch. You pause, steady the lamp, then blow a thin breath across the glowing specks until they darken to sleeping gray. Quiet returns, deeper now, as though the walls themselves lean closer to eavesdrop on the hush. Let your neck tilt, let temples cool, allow each fingertip to feel the fine vibration of spun fibers sliding free. Muscles behind the eyes soften, vision slows, and the world narrows to linen, wax, and breath. Halfway through the hymn, your mind drifts toward tomorrow's tasks. Dough awaiting night rise in a crock by the hearth, yeast dreaming in darkness. The thought lingers like warm honey at the back of your tongue, sweet, slow, inevitable. Yet you resist rushing. Fabric still needs closing, and dusk's peace deserves its full measure. So you keep stitching, anchoring every wandering thought with the needle's tiny kiss. Candle smoke draws faint rings above the flame, drifting ceiling-ward in lazy spirals that dissolve before touching beam. When the hem lies flat and true, you knot the final thread, pressing the knot with a thumb to seal intent. Wax has dwindled. One last luminous bead travels the taper, then stills. You stretch the cloth across both knees, admiring seams straight as monastery tiles. Outside, an owl calls, low, deliberate warning field mice. That darkness now belongs to silent wings. Inside, linen gleams whisper white, reflecting just enough fire to map the pattern of your day. You fold the mended cloak, smoothing edges, until they align like quiet promises. As you rise, the candle sputters, gulping its final breath. Darkness slips into the cottage, velvet soft and welcome. In that hush, you sense dough beginning its slow, swelling song within the crock, an unseen heartbeat guiding you toward midnight's next vigil by the hearth. With the cloak tucked beneath your arm, and the room breathing low embers, you step toward that waiting dough, ears tuned to subtle creaks in the rafters, eyes adjusting to ember-red gloom. Night work shifts shape again, thread to yeast, needle to kneading, while outside stars shoulder the sky a fraction higher, signaling time for bread to rise beneath the moon. Midnight hush settles over the cottage like a velvet loaf, turned upside down, warm on the outside, cool within. Outside the shutter, the moon hangs low and round as a proving bowl, bathing rafters in sifted silver. You pad barefoot across packed earth, guided by ember glow and the yeasty perfume rising from the crock near the hearth. Each inhale tastes of wheat and wood smoke. Each exhale drifts sweet and quiet, as though the air itself is kneading dreams. Your fingers tingle, remembering the day's flower dust prayers, waiting for dawn's slow blessing. You lift the crock lid with 2 careful fingers, and the dough sighs, swelling higher than a bishop's hat, glossy with bubbles that wink in the firelight. It has been coaxing itself upward all evening, fed by yesterday's ground grain and the well water fetched at dawn. A wooden spoon presses gently along the rim, checking strength. The surface resists, springy and eager, promising loaves that will stand proud at sunrise. Flour dust drifts from the scoop as you ready the kneading board. The world beyond the walls believes bread belongs to guild bakers and monastery ovens, but cottages like yours whisper a different scripture. Every woman a steward of crumb and crust. Bread, the original inflatable mattress, just less comfy. You smile at the thought, beating cold into retreat, with humor as brief as spark snap. Palms sink into dough, folding, turning, folding again. Heat builds under your wrists, softening the chill, lingering from water buckets and head shadow errands. You scatter a pinch of last week's salt across the mass, proof of morning's barter, and feel tiny crystals melt, vanishing into promise. Rhythm steadies, press, rock, turn. Nighttime becomes a metronome. Candlelight dances beside you, casting giant shadows that mimic your motions, as if ancestral bakers have slipped from memory to lend weight. While you work, mind wanders to myth and remedy. They say eating crusts toughens teeth. They say carving a cross atop each loaf scares imps from stealing the rise. You carve anyway, blade quick and sure, not for imps, but for steam. Tradition often hides practicality under folklore's cloak, like herbs brewing into medicine or gossip doubling as news. When you finish scoring, the dough gleams with 4 steady arms, prepared to expand rather than split. A low hearth brick, pre-warmed by embers, receives the shaped rounds. The scent deepens, nutty and alive, drifting through rafters to mingle with lavender bunches hung for drying. You slide an oak plank across the mouth of the oven space, sealing darkness around the future loaves. Outside, a wolf offers a distant commentary to the moon. Inside, yeast armies march unheard, lifting each grain toward morning's victory parade. You wash flour from your hands in the bucket, still cool from the stream, and the moon's reflection breaks into ripples that resemble the dough's first bubbles hours before. Fingers clean, you lay a damp cloth over the oven's lip to keep humidity generous. Another trick, unrecorded by the parchment chroniclers so fond of royal banquets. The cottage sighs satisfied, and you allow your spine to unwind, shoulders dropping like shutters after the last curfew bell. You ease onto the stool nearby, letting the slow heat seep through wool skirts, while your eyes trace ember patterns behind the grate. Loaves will take their secret, patient climb until dawn, and you will watch only the edges of that miracle, half asleep, half guardian. Outside the village, clouds herd across the stars, nudging a hush deeper into the valley. Soon, lids will droop. You will drift again into that smoke-soft kitchen of dreams, sensing dough inflate beneath the oak plank without seeing it. When the rooster calls, you will lift the board and meet bread swollen golden as sunrise itself. Yet between now and then lies a stretch of open velvety time, waiting to cradle your thoughts and lull your steady heart ever slower. In the velvet hush that drapes the cottage roof, you drift just above the eaves, neither fully sky-bound nor earth-tethered, breathing crust-warm air that still remembers the loaf you shaped moments ago. The night spreads beneath you like dark linen, stitched with faint ember threads, where chimneys breathe out their secret glow. Down within those beams, the slow dough rises, but here it is only a soft heartbeat, thudding once, then pausing, then blooming again, a pulse you feel through soles that do not touch timber. The scent of yeast slips upward, meeting cool moon metal breeze. The two mingle without quarrel, turning the air between into a silver-sweet mist. You float amid that gentle border, weightless as sifted flour caught in winter light. Somewhere farther off, an owl writes pale circles in the dark, feathers moving soundless as a spindle in distant hands. You do not follow its flight. Instead, you listen to the faint rasp of wing against night, a hush so thin it barely counts as sound, yet your breath slows to match its measured glide. Below, rafters creak like old lullabies, each plank remembering rain and sun, and the hammer that first fixed them in place. Mist lifts from the nearby stream, climbing toward you in lazy ribbons, smelling of wet stone and unanswered questions. It brushes your legs, leaves beads of cool on shins that never shiver, then drifts on, finding new shapes among roof peaks and apple branches. Every droplet carries the day's gossip, worn smooth by travel. Here in this mid-air calm, the words dissolve before they can form edges. Time dilates, heartbeats lengthen, moonlight thickens, and the space between bell strokes stretches until it feels like soft clay under gentle thumbs. You sense the whole village breathing in unison, cows exhaling grassy dreams, infants sighing in cradles, fire embers settling with tiny glassy pings. Their sounds rise, combine, then thin to a single barely there chord that hums inside your ribcage. You tip your head back, and the sky seems closer than skin, a quilt of quiet embroidery where every star is a careful knot. A passing cloud drapes over the moon, muting silver to pewter, yet night does not darken. Instead, it deepens, like ink soaking further into parchment. Your thoughts follow, wicking into that depth, each worry fading to pale watermarks, no longer legible. A gentle draft carries the pepper-sweet memory of morning's market, but the scent is softened, sifted through dream cloth until it becomes pure texture, warm, granular air brushing lips without taste. Even footsteps, echoing on cobble hours ago, are now mere ripples underfoot, as if the ground itself is a shallow pond, and you glide just above its surface, disturbing nothing. Some pulse beneath calls you downward, a reminder of tasks not yet named, but you let it ring once, twice, then fade, choosing instead to linger in this hush, where cause and effect loosen their handshake. Here, dough can rise without heat, water can flow upward to meet mist, and iron can glow cool and harmless. All contradictions settle into easy parity, like threads woven so tight their colors become quiet gray. At last, the loaf beneath the plank gives a faint sigh so tender you almost miss it. The sound nudges you homeward. You descend slowly, settling back into the hammock of your own breathing. Roof reed rustles just once against your sleeve, then releases. As floorboards remember your weight, dream sight dims, but its calm lingers, folded neatly beside the dough's warmth. You inhale, tasting steady yeast. Exhale, letting rest carry you deeper. Within that settling quiet, you place an invisible palm upon the attic air and feel echoes of every lullaby sung under this roof. Hushed Latin fragments, nonsense mother rhymes, soft whistling meant to tame colic. They swirl like dust in a single sun shaft. You did not notice until now, spinning lazy halos that widen then shrink, as though rehearsing the way dreams both arrive and retreat. The hush thickens, perfumed with faint lavender from ceiling rafters, and you find yourself rocking, ever so slightly, matching the cradle ghost that sways somewhere just beyond sight. A last look toward the shutter shows moonlight squeezing through a hairline crack, a single thread of silver stitching floor to sky. You follow it down, watching it lie across the empty kneading board, bathing flower specks in dim frost. They glimmer then vanish as the ember falls, yet the afterglow lingers behind your eyes, sealing the scene like wax upon parchment. Stubble pricks your ankles as dawn unrolls thin gold across the empty barley field, each stalk catching light like 1,000 tiny needles. Dry husks rustle beneath your skirt with every careful step, sounding like distant rain against a shutter. A harvest cart has already trundled off toward the manor barn, leaving neat sheaves stacked like soldiers. But the earth still hides stray kernels, glinting shyly among broken stems. You breathe deep, sun-warmed chaff, damp soil, a hint of wood smoke drifting from cottages beyond the hedgerow. The air feels expectant, as though the field itself is holding its breath for you. You crouch close to the ground, spine lengthening into the posture of practiced patience, and draw a small cloth sack from your belt. Fingers part the ragged stubble, combing gently through brittle debris until a plump head of grain emerges, overlooked by hurried sickles. Gleaning is part scavenger hunt, part silent prayer. Every kernel rescued today is porridge next week, bread crust next month, maybe seed when spring circles round again. Scholars will one day record yields in bushels and manors and lords' ledgers, forgetting this quieter ledger you keep with your hands. Moving along a narrow row, you follow shadowed dips where the reaper's rhythm faltered yesterday, edges where blades swung wide. The geometry of neglect becomes a map only gleaners can read, guiding you toward pocket-sized fortunes. Knees whisper across earth, skirts gathering straw scratchings that poke like shy questions. Overhead, a lark bursts upward, its song a small flag of triumph. You answer with a smile no one sees. Soon the sack gains weight. Nothing dramatic, just a subtle tug, reminding you of success. Myth paints medieval hunger as an unquestioned fate, yet here is evidence to the contrary. Resourcefulness bending statistics in your favor, kernel by golden kernel. You pause, allowing shoulders to loosen, breath to drift slower, the way dough eases under cloth. Far off, church bells strike tierce, sunlight lifts another notch, sweat cools along your nape, threaded with faint relief. A shadow glides across the ground. Agnes arrives, basket swinging, her grin carved from the same stubborn hope. Together you work side by side, trading quiet strategies, search along cart ruts, where wheels shook grain loose, pinch stems, just beneath the nodding head to avoid bruising, shake handfuls gently, so chaff falls and seeds stay. Conversation flows in broken murmurs, an herb recipe, a warning that the steward returns by sext. Words settle lightly, like dust. The real dialogue is movement, synchronized and sure. Halfway down the field, you discover a pocket where a reaper's blade snapped. Uncut stalks droop in a tangled arc. Heartbeats quicken, but haste would spill more than it gathers. So you breathe deep and work measured, twisting stems free, laying them in neat bundles to thresh later. Each bundle feels like a private victory hymn, silent yet ringing beneath your ribs. Between handfuls you hear wind combing distant trees. Its steady hush mirrors the steady hush inside your mind. At length, the sun climbs higher, casting short shadows that warn of time slipping. Your sack now tugs insistently, promising sore shoulders yet welcome weight for winter. Agnes lifts her basket, testing heft with a satisfied nod. You share a quick exchange, meet at the stream before noon, swap gleaned straw for mint sprigs. If the herb woman agrees, watch for the steward's tally riders. Plans flicker brief but sure, sewn into the day like hidden stitches. You straighten slowly, vertebrae unfolding with tiny pops. Stubble scratches fade beneath a cooling breeze, and the field stretches silent again, stripped nearly bare yet generous in what remains. A glance toward the manor shows roof slates flashing blue, but no riders yet. Still prudence calls. You tie the sack tight, smoothing stray stems, and trace a final circle of vision across rows now gleaming almost empty. Satisfaction pulses low and steady, an ember tucked behind the breastbone. As you step toward the hedgerow path, kernels shift in the sack with a soft, promising hush. Evening will bring counting, winnowing, maybe a slip of payment to the baker for oven space. Beyond that, bread dough and simmering broth, and the subtle reassurance that winter's ledger just tilted ever so slightly in your favor. But first comes the stream, cool water on dust-streaked wrists, and the murmured barter of mint for straw. The day is not yet half spent, yet already you carry a pocketful of sunrise. Dawn's pink already paling. You step into the hush beneath the beech canopy. Frost-stiff grass, snapping like spun sugar beneath your soles. Breath feathers the cold air, then drifts away, mingling with the sweet, sharp scent of sap and distant mushroom rot. Sunlight slants between trunks and pale cathedral columns. Motes spin within each beam, like shy moths caught in holy water. On your back, a woven sling hugs empty as promise, eager to cradle fire's future song. All around, the forest creaks awake, limbs settling, crows muttering, a squirrel scolding the sky for lateness. You keep to the deer path skirting manor land, for the forester's fines cut deeper than thorns. Forest tax, early form of daylight robbery. A dry chuckle puffs white in the chill. Lords claim every branch thicker than a finger, yet winter honors no parchment. You measure each fallen bough against memory, thumb width safe, wrist thick forbidden, snapping lengths with a mutter and tucking them silent into your sling. Myth paints medieval women as hearth-bound, but your footsteps reach further than many monks' quills, mapping clearings with inner compass tuned to moss, paw prints, and the low growl of distant stream. Boot leather brushes heather, stirring scent like warm bread crust. A jay bursts from shrub, its screech ricocheting through trunks, and your heart jumps once, then settles. You scan for the forester's red hood. Nothing. Still, caution is its own cloak. You stoop where windstorm offered gifts, twigs stripped clean, fragrant pine knots that promise long burn. Fingers numb, you cradle them anyway, rubbing warmth back into skin with breath that smells faintly of last night's stew. Twigs tap together, a quiet xylophone of survival. Halfway homeward, arms already ache beneath the growing bundle, but routine smooths pain into humming background. You balance weight against spine, pace even, mind counting chores, mint to trade for straw, loaf to check, spindle to oil. Thought drifts to the steward's upcoming tally ride. You imagine his face, if he knew how many hearths spark from forbidden kindling. Knowledge feels like a secret ember, glowing bright in pocketed dark. A frost-fringed brook cuts across your route, water clear enough to mirror winter sky. You pause, kneel, and rinse tingling fingers. Cold bites sharp, then numb, pain receding like tide. Overhead, beech leaves rattle their dry lullaby, encouraging you onward. Sling creaks as you rise, weight redistributing along shoulders, and for a moment, gravity itself feels like a familiar friend, guiding each step. Near the field's edge, hoofprints stamp frozen mud, foresters gelding, less than an hour old. You slip behind a hawthorn, breath shallow, heart muffled beneath wool. Hoofbeats fade. Silence spills in their absence like cooled wax. You exhale, tasting relief bright as winter apple. Once danger dissolves, the forest seems to widen, branches parting to usher you home. The sling now bulges with fuel. Crooked limbs, resin-heavy knots, shavings, curled like sleeping snails, enough to outlast 2 long frosts, and still warm the bread trough. Breaking tree line, you catch sight of your cottage roof, straw glinting amber in newborn sun. Each step across frosted stubble cracks a thin crust of ice, the sound crisp and oddly soothing, like breaking a burnt sugar top on feast day custard. Approaching the door, you loosen strap, letting gathered wood slide into a tidy heap that knocks softly against mended hearth tools. Pine scent unfurls, sweet and medicinal, joining lingering yeast and lavender in a fragrant braid thicker than any rope. Shoulders roll free, muscles sigh. You kneel to sort lengths, thin for quick flare, thick for dawn bank, stacking them like verses in a hymn no scribe will write. Inside, dough rests beneath damp cloth, spindle leans in the corner, wool waiting to be teased into thread. You brush pine dust from palms and glance toward the wheel, its silent promise of evening, hush, drawing you forward. But first, a cup of herb brew to thaw stiff fingers, steam curling soft as cats purr while ashes stir for their next bright hymn. Beyond shutters, the forest keeps its counsel, limbs swaying slow as lullaby. You shut the door with careful quiet, pine knots clutched like tiny suns against your chest, ready to feed the hearth that guards night from cold imagination. Soon spindle hum will answer embers, wool clouds will twist to thread, stories of forest shadows will ease into the soft whir of spinning, drawing you onward to the next gentle labor of survival. A hush of dusk blue settles across the cottage as you slip the spindle's slender shaft between your palms. Lantern light flutters in the window glass, painting warm honey ripples over baskets brimful of uncombed fleece. Outside, a soft wind strokes the thatch, setting loose straws whispering like distant reeds. But in here, every breath sounds padded, wrapped in the hush that wool naturally carries. The air tastes faintly lanolin sweet, and the first draw of fiber feels cool and silken against your thumb, promising a thread fine enough to turn night worries into something stronger than morning doubts. You begin with the age-old ritual carding locks, until the fibers lie parallel, teasing away burrs, straw, and any lurking beetle that mistook a sheep's back for safe lodging. Fluff rises like whipped clouds, and you roll each tuft into a rowlog, little scrolls of potential stacked neat as parchment beside the wheel. Myth says, men crafted the realm's fortunes, while women simply tended hearths. One touch of rowlog to spindle disproves it. Twist the shaft, feed the cloud, watch the first yarn snake away, strong, continuous, ready to stitch winter to spring. Foot on treadle, you coax the wheel into an unhurried whir. Oak spokes blur, lantern light catching on each rim, until an amber halo hovers in the gloom, turning the act of spinning into a quiet benediction. Your left hand drifts back, letting fibers pay out. Right fingers pinch and release, an ocean tide shrunk to finger width, with each ripple smoothing the yarn's heartbeat. Warmth gathers along your shin, where treadle leather meets wool-lined boot. Pulse slows to match the wheel's soft hush. As the bobbin thickens, thoughts wander the way sheep roam moorland. You recall the market haggle that earned this fleece, 2 jars of mint decoction, and a nod to the Reeves wife. A fair trade, given that lamb's coat now becomes blanket, cloak lining, maybe even fishing net twine once plied thicker. Scholars will tally taxes on wool exports, charting coin across seas, yet never note the humble hanks curled tonight in homes like yours. Wealth counted in quiet loops rather than clinking purses. The rhythm deepens, twist tightens, spindle hums low, almost a purr, and your shoulders release the day's stiffness, the way fleece surrendered its knots. Lantern flame dips whenever you lean closer, so you angle a polished shard of pewter behind its wick, doubling amber light across the wheel. Wool glows moon pale where the beam slides over fresh yarn, and every few arm spans you pause to add a half hitch, securing hope against sudden tangle. A gust rattles shutters. You glance up, half expecting the forester's red hood again, but see only branches dancing in lantern reflections. Safe. Twist and draft resume their gentle duet. Press, pull, breathe. Your mind drifts to Osric's nails waiting on the shelf, and the pine knots stacked for dawn. Each carries a thread of your labor, woven invisible through village life. Out in the dark, wolves sing thin silver lines across the valley, stark yet distant. You answer with a thicker, homelier melody. Spin whir, treadle creak, heartbeat, repeat. When the bobbin fills, you tie off the tail, stroke the yarn once, and marvel at its smooth resilience. In the calm that follows, the room seems larger, its corners receding into velvet shadow, while the lantern makes a soft, contented sizzle. You wind the skein between thumb and elbow, counting loops the way abbots count beads, 20 turns, 30, 60, until a neat hank rests warm against your wrist. You drape it on the mantle, where ember light licks its curves, and in that glow, the wool looks like dawn cloud tempered into silk. Tomorrow it may meet dyer's cauldron, drink madder red or woad blue, then dry beside garden sage. But tonight the fiber keeps its sheep-white purity, holding the breath of pasture and the hush of twilight fields. Outside, the loaf-scented night deepens. Bread cools, stew thickens, and somewhere the steward's riders draw up their ledger lines, unaware that real wealth now hangs in a soft coil by your hearth. You stretch arms overhead, feeling vertebrae slip into grateful alignment, and listen. Wheel silent, fire low, owl, calling 3 deliberate notes. A fresh task waits, tending the fevered child perhaps, or counting tomorrow's rations. But for one long sighing moment, you let night hold its pause. Thread ambitions pause with it, and lantern smoke drifts in lazy spirals toward rafters, marking time until the next gentle labor beckons. A hush, heavy as lamplight, blankets the cottage, in candle glow pools over the straw mattress where your youngest lies curled like a dormouse. Fever has tinted cheeks, bronze red, sweat purling at the hairline, breath rattling soft as wind through reeds. The air smells of damp wool, cool lavender rinse, and ember-kissed broth, simmering low on the hearth. Outside, drizzle stitches the dark with whispered needles. Inside, each heartbeat thuds gentle thunder beneath your ribs, steadying your hands for the work ahead. You begin with touch, back of wrist to brow, reading the heat the way monks read illuminated margins, too warm by half. You ladle broth through linen, straining onion shards so the liquid slides smooth across cracked lips. Steam curls upward, spiced with thyme. You tucked into the cauldron at dusk. Myth claims medieval mothers bowed only to saints. When illness struck, truth rests in your satchel of remedies. Dried willow bark for ache, elderberry syrup for lungs, mint to keep nausea at bay. You place the bundle beside the bed, like a tiny, fragrant armory. The feverish eyes flutter open, pupils haze dark like pond water at dusk. You smile, smoothing damp hair, and whisper the same soothing tale your mother spun beneath plague-bruised moons, a silver fish that swam through sickness, carrying light in its scales. Voice low, words unhurried, you trace a gentle arc with thumb across the child's temple, sinking breath to that imaginary fish's lazy glide. When lids droop again, you slide a beeswax candle closer, letting its honey scent soften stale air. Next, you anchor hope in motion. A linen strip soaked in willow infusion cools across the forehead, drawing heat away like dusk, drawing day from sky. You lift the child's hand, small, boneless, hot, and dab wrists, elbows, knees with mintless water to spare skin overstimulation. Each touch sings quiet lullaby to nerves strung taut by fever. Lamplight trembles, reflecting in small sweat beads, like sunrise and dewdrops. You exhale slow, letting shoulders sink, refusing panic the pleasure of purchase. Hours stretch, braided from small rituals. Sip, wipe, story, hum. Between tasks, you fold fresh sheets, adjust dying coals, review your herb jars under candle blink. Whorehound nearly empty, must barter more. Licorice still plentiful, a drop might soothe coughing dawn. For now, broth suffices. You glance toward the hearth, where dough-rich bread cools. Sustenance, waiting in the wings like a loyal understudy. The child stirs, coughing feathers of air. You tip elderberry tincture onto a spoon, dark, tangy, familiar, and prime the throat with one bittersweet swallow. A moment later, chest settles, breathing, stretching longer, deeper, steadier. You hold that rhythm inside your own lungs, matching tempo until your pulse eases. Outside, rain thickens, drumming comfort into thatch, every droplet a tiny percussionist marking survival's beat. Minutes, maybe hours, slide by, measured only by candle stub, shrinking into a golden pool. Fever's flame dims, your rag now cools rather than steams. You replace it anyway, honoring ritual's power to keep dread at bay. Thought drifts to Agnes's warning of coughs, spreading along the lane. How many jars remain to share? The question flicks across mind, then dissolves, as the child exhales a sigh, shaped like relief. You hum a cradle song, once taught by a visiting tinker. Words nonsense, melody gentle as rain on leaves. Voice wobbles, but candle friend joins, wick crackling harmonious. The child's brow, moments ago furnace hot, now registers warm dawn rather than midday blaze. You feel gratitude rise, like fresh bread, swelling quietly, without need for proclamation. A final pallet of tasks, tucked blanket beneath chilled toes, trade cooling rag for dry cloth, stoke embers one thin log higher. Outside, drizzle lessens to stray drops. A gust lifts smoke up the flue, taking with it the last sharp tang of fever breath. In the calm that follows, you lean back, spine against wattle wall, and let eyes half close. The child sleeps, chest moving easy, nostrils flaring, once then resting. Candlelight paints long soft bars across blanket, weaving gold into wool. Beyond the door, night's ledger still holds chores, rations to count, gossip to dodge, thread to twist. But for now, you keep vigil beside tiny, steady breaths. Rain hush fades, replaced by owl's single note, low and final, like a wax seal on evening's letter. You exhale, matching hush, and promise yourself a scant hour of rest when dawn's first robin clears its throat. Until then, you will sit, breathe, and let quiet triumph settle into bones with the same surety as cooling fever on a child's peaceful brow. Shutters are latched, neighbors long asleep, and drizzle pecks the roof like timid fingertips. The night feels stitched together from sighs and wood smoke. The cottage breathes a hush so deep, even the embers whisper under their own breath, rust-red eyes half closed, unwilling to disturb the spell of accounting. A single rushlight flickers on the table, its tiny flame hammering gold nails into the dark, while outside the valley lies ink black and listening. You sit cross-legged before the open grain coffer, knees wrapped in shawl, spoon poised to reckon survival kernel by careful kernel. Budgeting, medieval, but still better than court accountants. Your spoon dips, drawing a modest cup of barley, letting grains fall through parted fingers into a glazed bowl. Each bead clicks, like distant hail, a tally only you and the hush record. You count in 12s, habit learned from church bells, sliding a carved peg along a board after each dozen. Pegs line up like tired soldiers, marking winter in wood instead of ink. Flour dust from yesterday's baking hangs in the lamplight like pale smoke. You shift to the bean jar, lids creak, beans clack, and your pulse mimics their rhythm. Slow, deliberate, sure. 2 handfuls for each week, until lambing, 1 extra for feast days, if illness spares the household. Math drifts under your breath, in half-spoken sums, softened so loft sleepers stay dreaming. The cough rustles straw. Your youngest turns, blanket sighing. You hold breath until their breathing evens, then measure peas, green moons against brown pottery. Myth will say hunger ruled every medieval winter. Your calm ledger argues louder, You glance at rafters as if future scholars roost there, recording this quiet audit. Chestnuts follow peas, dull brown domes smelling of leaf mold and sweet soil. Some will roast at Yule, others thicken sleet season stews. Cracked ones drop into a small crock for quick use. Candle grease pools. You tip melted rim to a saucer, saving both light and fat. Resourcefulness hums like a psalm beneath your breath. You turn finally to the herb packets, tucked in a wooden box. Thyme, marjoram, a thumb-length stick of precious cinnamon, saved from a peddler's cart. These weigh almost nothing yet wield power over spirits and sores. You open each twist of cloth, inhale gardens, long since frost killed, then seal them again, whispering a tiny vow to stretch flavor into spring. Even hope has a ration line, and tonight you mark it soberly, though the scent sparks summer behind your eyes. Next comes salt, precious as sermon silver, tipped in pinches onto linen, then knotted tight. Salt measures not by spoonful, but by fear. Too little, broth sours. Too much, barter fails. Cloth tied, you place it among beans, and feel the day's haggling echo beneath fingertips. When grain, legume, nut, herb, and mineral stand, ranked like choir stalls, you stroke the smooth pegs, tally complete. Outside, drizzle thickens, sounding like pages turning. You picture snow weeks hence, blanketing fields, and smile at your secret. Dinner's already nested inside these jars, safe from Lord Reeve or weather. You pack lids tight, slide the coffer under the bench, and pinch the rushlight until only a ruby ember survives. In darkness, your fingertips still feel the bean count, ghosts of numbers lining skin. You think of the wool skein waiting to die, the forest path iced for dawn, the steward's riders scribbling tallies, none as precise as yours. A yawn unfurls like ribbon. Night invites you toward the hearth's faint glow. Tomorrow before sunrise, you'll touch each jar once, just to be sure, and then follow ember scent into dreams, where granaries echo like cathedrals, and every kernel rings a tiny brass bell. You float somewhere between rafters and roof slate, neither waking nor gone, as if a mild wind has threaded your body with barley chaff and set you gently adrift over the granary's hush. Below, moon-white piles of grain swell like silent dunes, each kernel glimmering where stray shafts of lantern light sneak through knotholes. No footsteps echo here. Instead, the building hums with the faint remembrance of daytime labor. Sickle swish, gleaner's sigh, peg clicking over ledgerboard. Those sounds have thinned to ghost wisps, drifting in corners like pale cobweb silk. You listen anyway, ears attuned to the far-off susurrus of barley shifting against barley, a dry, soothing sea that breathes once whenever a rafter settles. You become weightless dust, suspended in that murmur, turning slow as a spindle left spinning after hands have gone to sleep. Threads of lamplight cross your vision, gold on gold, mapping invisible aisles between the drifts. Walls seem taller now, planks stretching cathedral high, and sacks stacked neat at their base resemble choir stalls, each one muffled, brimful, waiting for some soft nocturne to begin. A flicker of memory floats within reach, your spoon counting rations into bowls, beans clacking, salt whispering. In this half-lit chapel, the same motions repeat, yet fingers are airy shapes formed of smoke. They hover above grain, tracing loops that raise no dust, leave no mark, but you feel the numbers imprint themselves all the same. Gentle mathematical snow, settling on thought. Far overhead, beams intersect, carving dark geometries, through which moonlight drips at measured intervals. Every droplet of silver lands on grain, then vanishes, swallowed without sound. You realize the roof weeps light rather than water, and the thought brings no surprise. Dreams amend physics to fit comfort, and tonight comfort is the hush of stored harvest, immune to storm or steward's tally. Somewhere a sparrow stirs in the thatch, feathers rustling like pages turned by a slow reader. The flutter ripples through rafters, traveling as a soft pulse that rocks the grain in miniature waves. You drift lower, toes brushing the surface, but the kernels hold firm, supporting you as if they have agreed to become sand for this moment. Each breath you draw carries a faint sweetness, sun-warm grass, straw, sun-bleached and brittle, summer bottled for winter solace. You crouch, placing dream hands upon the mound. The grain responds with a muted clatter, as though tiny bells were sewn inside every husk. Their chorus is so quiet, you feel it more in bones than ears, a shimmering vibration that steadies pulse and lengthens exhale. You let lids fall half-closed. Darkness behind them glows amber, the color of barley broth, turning in a cauldron. With eyes shuttered, you sense shapes rather than see them. The curve of the hand quern, the slim arc of Agnes's smile, the distant rooftop where moonlight stitched silver lines across cooling lows. All drift past, lace-light, too soft to weigh memory, yet vivid enough to guide a phantom thumb over phantom grain, comforting it the way you once soothed fevered brow. Time loosens. Perhaps breaths stretch to fill whole minutes. Perhaps minutes collapse into single heartbeats. Lantern beams recede until only moon threads remain, and even those thin further, pulled slowly skyward, as if some gentle giant reels them in for safekeeping. Grain dulls to pale gray in their absence, but warmth lingers, a low internal glow, as though kernels remember sunlight in their cores and choose to share it through the chill. You straighten, no effort, no muscle pull, rise again toward rafters, guided by the faint scent of lavender stored on a high shelf. As you pass, cloth bundles sigh, releasing half memories of summer gardens, now sleeping under frost. The smell trails behind, like a veil, cool on lungs, settling mind deeper into calm. At the roof peak a narrow gap shows night beyond, cloudless, star-tight, quiet as new snow. You drift toward it, but stop just short, choosing instead to hover inside this wooden cradle where grain guards tomorrow. Outside, owls chart dark currents. Inside, thousands of kernels rest cheek to cheek, each a tiny sealed promise. You exhale, sending one last ripple across their surface, an almost inaudible benediction, and feel it return, softened, accepted. Slowly the granary dims, edges melting, as if darkness were warm wax pooling over a cooled mold. Sound narrows to one final hush of grain settling. Then even that fades beneath the more intimate rhythm of your own slowing heart. You surrender to that hush, allowing it to lower you back toward the body, sleeping not far away, spoon still near, ledger pegs aligned, candle stub cooling in its saucer. The weightlessness dissolves. A faint pressure of straw beneath shoulder blades announces safe return. Yet for a breath you keep the memory of that echoing chapel, vaults of timber, dunes of barley, moon weeping silver, tucked behind closed eyelids. When morning comes heavy with new tasks, you know one quiet glance at the grain coffer will summon tonight's hush, a reminder that plenty rests close, and peace sometimes sounds like kernels clicking softly in the dark. Drowsy bells finish their third peal as you step from the nave into noon light, cloak hem grazing stone, worn smooth by generations of quiet souls. Sun dapples the lech gate, scattering coin-bright flecks over mossy slabs that still shimmer with last night's rain. Gravestones tilt like patient listeners, their lichen letters softened into gentle secrets, while incense ghosts drift from the doorway and braid with damp earth, thyme and beeswax polish. Every breath arrives herb sweet, cool, and oddly hopeful, as if the very air expects bargains to bloom among these weathered saints. You pause on the gravel path, basket balanced against hip, and scan the mingling knots of parish folk. Here, gossip bends toward opportunity. A nod near St. Bridget's cross might land you surplus linen. A whispered blessing at the rood screen might secure barley seed come spring. Two widows compare candle stubs beneath a yew. A miller palms a coin to the verger, hoping to shave a tithe next fortnight. Myth claims women shuffled mute behind the priest, yet this courtyard thrums with their fluent ledger, favor, trade, and subtle rescue spoken in glances, sharper than quills. Agnes catches your eye near the bone-white statue of St. Cuthbert. You drift closer, skirts brushing rosemary planted for remembrance. and she slips a folded scrap into your palm. The Reeves wife will barter half a wheel of cheese for 3 skeins of your newly spun wool. Good news, protein enough to keep thin bodies stout through Lent. While you weigh that offer, the blacksmith's apprentice sidles up, hat in hand, asking if you'll share mint tonic for his mother's cough. He can repay with 6 sturdy nails, perfect for patching the loom bench. You offer a thoughtful hum, then nod. Promissory grace settles in his grin. A breeze stirs the churchyard yews, carrying faint psalm echoes, harmonies lingering like dust motes in stained glass light. You let shoulders soften, spine rising tall, yet pliant, so breath trickles lower and slower, smoothing the hush between heartbeats. The moment stretches velvet wide. Every face around you blurs to gentle shapes. Every request filters through calm, as through a linen sieve. In that softened stillness, you can almost hear the ground inhale, grateful for footfalls lighter than nightly boots. Negotiations resume. You pivot toward the Reeves wife, who studies you beneath an embroidered veil, heavy with status. You dip a respectful knee, yet meet her gaze steady as lamplit water. 3 skeins, you propose, dyed woad blue and twisted firm. She tilts her veil, assessing. Agreement lands in 2 heartbeats, sealed by the faintest smile. Trade may kneel before parchment law, but it bows deeper to need. Nearby, a traveling peddler unfurls ribbons bright as peacock feathers, hoping to snare coin before clouds muster. Your fingers linger on a length of muted russet. Someday it might edge a festival camise, but prudence reigns desire. Instead, you trade 1 ginger root for a coil of sturdy twine, imagining its future securing roof thatch against autumn gales. Each exchange stitches safety through seasons yet arrived, turning risk into fabric no steward's ink can fray. The bell tower casts a lengthening shadow, pointing toward slate clouds assembling beyond the elm-ringed meadow. A thrush calls once sharp and urgent, as if translating the sky's intent. You tuck the cheese pledge and nails into your basket, adjust cloak pins, and bid farewell with soft blessings that skim like swallows over bowed heads. By the time you pass the lich gate, wind has freshened, rattling iron hinges, promising rain heavy enough to bruise straw. Gravel crunches beneath hurried boots, while your mind shifts from barter to rafters. The cottage roof bears a worrying gap where storm-born branches tore thatch last month. Tar and straw wait stacked near the porch, eager for skilled hands and a spell of dry. You quicken pace, tasting incoming moisture on the breeze, hearing distant thunder mumble behind gathering clouds. Before dusk you must climb the ladder, weave new layers, and pray the sky holds mercy long enough for tar to seal. But already first drops patter against your cloak, cool and insistent, urging you onward toward eaves that need patching before night spills open. Damp twilight presses close, the sky a quilt gray lid stitched with quicksilver seams. Fresh straw pricks your palms, tar in the kettle breathes peppery fumes that curl into nostrils and sting awake. Wind flits under the eaves, cool and sly, lifting the thatch like a curious cat. Your ladder creaks, each rung slick with drizzle, while distant thunder mutters about overdue debts. Somewhere behind you, loaves cool and candles gutter. Yet now all the world narrows to damp straw, hot pitch, and the slow drum of oncoming rain. You climb, knees steady, basket of straw slung from one elbow, pitch-smeared brush clenched in gloved fingers. Myth says medieval women never touched rooftops save to shake linens. Tonight proves otherwise. From this perch, the village looks pocket-sized, misty chimney threads, tiny sheep, the church steeple, just a needle stuck into cloud. You anchor one boot against the ridge beam, then kneel where a storm-torn gap gapes black, wide enough to let winter whistle through dreams. Straw first, you weave handfuls under the surrounding thatch, twisting ends until they lock like clasped hands. Wind plucks at loose stalks, but finds them stubborn. Small victory hums beneath your ribs. Tar next. The kettle hangs from a hook, fixed earlier with Osric's nails. Payment for mint tonic. Steam rises, carrying a burnt pine tang that coats tongue and memory. You dab pitch along the woven straw, pressing gently with the flat brush. It seeps glossy and thick, turning pale stalks ink dark. Rain chooses that moment to arrive, gentle at first, then resolute. Pitch snaps and sizzles under stray drops, yet sets firm, sealing each fiber like lacquer on scripture. Roofing tip. Prayer works best after tar. You whisper a quick one anyway, more habit than hope, letting words drift with smoke into the low sky. Another gap, smaller, crooked, hides beneath moss near the chimney stack. You ease sideways along the slick ridge, balance instinctive, cloak beating against calves. Each stroke of pitch glints briefly in lightning light, then dulls to matte. Below, owls hush mice, and the Reeves riders scribble rent notes beneath cloak hoods, unaware this roof now resists their weather as well as their ledgers. Muscles in back and arms burn, yet the ache feels clean, washing days' earlier toils into simple rhythm. Weave, brush, press, weave, brush, press. Somewhere inside chest, breath lengthens, rainwater cools neck, and calm settles like warm dough. A final sweep along ridge completes the seal. You sit, legs astride the peak, allowing rain to rinse tar streaks from gloves. Clouds crack. A gust flings wet night across your cheeks, leaving tiny pinpricks of goose flesh that fade as quickly as they bloom. Down below, hearth smoke curls through the new thatch without snag, proof of proper draft. You smile, a small curved ember in the storm, then begin descent, ladder trembling with each muddy step. Ground receives you, soft grass squishing under soles. You stretch once vertebrae, stacking with quiet satisfaction, while warm night rain applauds against your shoulders. Inside, straw scent follows like a pocket meadow. You prop the brush by fading embers, drape cloak to dry, and listen. Not a whisper of leak nor trickle meets your ear, only the even patter of rain rejected by sturdy roof. Rushlight glows amber over stored grain, beans, and sealed salt. Its timid flame flicks shadows that dance but do not tremble. Inhale, slow, feel the room widen. Exhale, slower still, and ease into the hush that swells when storm stays politely outside. Soon you will descend to the cellar, checking jars and roots for tomorrow's packing. Winter presses closer with each cold gust, and stores must stand ready before frost breathes iron into the soil. Yet for this heartbeat, you rest in the scent of cool tar, wet straw, and distant thunder fading westward. Rain drums on safe thatch like steady drumskins, lulling resolve to gentle readiness. Beyond the shutter, clouds race, seeking new roofs to test. Beneath yours, peace lifts like fresh-baked steam, promising that the work of day has earned the quiet of night, and hinting that deeper preparations await in shadowed cellars, where roots, jars, and hope must soon be counted once more. Cellar air greets you like cool linen laid over fevered skin, damp, earthen, edged with the faint copper tang of old nails. A stub candle balances on the first stair, throwing pear-shaped halos that slide across stacked bins and hanging roots. You descend slowly, basket braced against hip, feeling stone steps sip warmth from your soles. Each footfall echoes in the barrel-vaulted hush, as though the very walls hold their breath, guarding the season's final reckoning. Reaching the packed dirt floor, you pause to savor the layered scents: dusty burlap, sprouting potato eyes, a ghost of last autumn's cider. Shadows huddle between casks, while cobweb bridges glitter in candlelight, spun tight enough to catch stray whispers. You set the basket down, fingers tingling with anticipation and a small, satisfied dread. This inventory, more intimate than confession, will measure how far hope can stretch before snowbreak. You start with roots. Beets nestle crimson and quiet in straw-lined crates. You lift one, thumb tracing its rough heart, skin unwrinkled, still firm. Good. The carrot barrel follows, lank orange soldiers standing at attention, tips blunted by weeks of patience. Soft spots? A few. You cull them with swift mercy, slicing tops for tomorrow's stew, consigning soggy middles to the compost bucket. Myth claims medieval fare was monotone gruel. Here color persists, hidden like rubies beneath soil and vigilance. Next, you untie the onion braid, festooning the overhead beam. Bulbs chime softly as you lower them, papery skins, whispering of summer heat, now locked away. You clip 3 small heads off the cord to barter with Agnes, hers spoiled in unexpected damp, and retwist the remaining loop, hanging it higher where air flows freer. Conservation, part dance, part chess, entirely necessary. You kneel at the grain chest, lift the lid, and candlelight reveals barley dunes untouched since the last tally. A wooden measure dips, fills, pours, muted hiss of grain against oak. Your shoulders relax one notch. The levels sit just shy of plenty, neither scant nor indulgent. Enough to thicken pottage, perhaps even lend handfuls to neighbors when coughs steal appetites. Generosity is its own insulation. Along the back wall sit glazed jars of herb tincture, beeswax sealed and dated in charcoal strokes. Elderberry, horehound, yarrow, each a bottled truce with winter illness. You tilt one toward the flame. Liquid laps thick and garnet rich. Supplies hold. Unvoiced relief flows through ribs, widening your breath. You smear a speck of wax back into place, resealing both jar and resolve. A sudden drip plinks somewhere behind the cider barrel, roof tar still curing. You crouch, candle low, but find only condensation sliding from cold stone. No leak. Still, you tuck a square of oiled cloth beneath the suspect mortar joint, precaution layered like straw beneath fragile fruit. Crate lids thump shut, minor percussion in the underground hush. You move to the final test. Apples. Wooden trays reveal round gold reds dappled like small moons. You press one, skin taut, yield slight, nearly perfect. 2 show bruises, you mark them for pie, unwilling to surrender even blemished sweetness. Candle stub gutters, scenting the cellar with warm tallow. Its tiny flame reminds you of time, wax dripping like sand in an hourglass laid on its side. Counting complete, you fetch the slate chip where tallies live, roots, grain, salt, medicinal jars. Each etched mark stands firm. You add tonight's measures, then run a thumb over the slate's cool surface, smoothing stray dust into faint constellations. Satisfaction hums low, steady, not smug. Winter will still press hard, but shelves no longer echo hollow. Basket, refilled with culled scraps, and tomorrow's barter. You climb toward warmer air. Halfway up, you pause, candle held aloft, and glance back. Crates, jars, and barrels huddle like cloistered monks, each guarding a sermon of survival. You nod once, silent benediction, before sealing the heavy hatch. Latch clicks, shutting night safely underground. Back in the cottage, hearthlight greets you orange and forgiving. You swing the hatch rug over chilled toes, set scraps for stew, and breathe the mingled fragrances of apple skin, straw, and distant pine fire. Storm clouds prowl beyond shutters, but their chill finds no purchase here. Stores are set, ledger sure. When snow thickens road and rumor alike, you'll return to that cool chapel beneath the floorboards. Each visit, a prayer answered in advance by tonight's calm diligence. Night settles thick and velvet around the hearth, and the single log you fed it snaps, sending a brief fountain of sparks that dance up the chimney like fugitives chasing stars. The scent of resin and singed pine fills the air, mingling with the quiet sweetness of stewed apples, cooling beside the fire brick. Shadows sway across lime-washed walls, tall and slow, coaxing every muscle to soften. Outside, rain continues its steady hush over thatch, sealing the cottage in a gentle spell, while time loosens its corset strings. You slip a bench nearer the embers, inviting Agnes and two neighboring lads who arrived late with gossip and damp cloaks. They lower themselves onto woven stools, boots steaming, and tilt eager faces toward the glow. A fresh stick crackles. Orange light paints the circle in copper melodies. Someone asks for the story of the king who bargained with bread, and your lips curl, recalling the tale your grandmother spun. On nights just like this, when winter prowled outside yet dared not cross the threshold of a good yarn, you begin with a measured whisper, voice blending with fire's gentle percussion. The king, you explain, once disguised himself as a penniless pilgrim to learn which of his subjects showed true kindness. Traveling empty-handed, he begged crusts from door to door. Many slammed shutters, but one cottage wife welcomed him, splitting her last loaf without complaint. When spring returned, the monarch revealed his identity and filled her granary past brimming. Agnes's eyes shine. The lads lean closer, their earlier bravado slackening into wonder. Halfway through, you pause to ladle spiced cider, its cinnamon plume curling above wooden cups. The brew's warmth settles in bellies and brightens cheeks. Conversation flickers. Someone recalls the Reeves' miscounted oxen, drawing parallels between hidden virtue and hidden spite. You steer the mood gently back, weaving a subtle myth bust. Royal visitors were rare, but neighbors in need appeared weekly, and generosity usually traveled by foot, not thrown. Listeners nod, absorbing the lesson folded inside the legend like honey in pastry. Cups drained, you unfurl another tale, the one about the night. The moon fell into the river, and a miller's daughter fished it out with nothing but her apron and faith. Your words paint silver ripples, damp reeds, a girl's trembling hands. The fire pops as if tossing pebbles into dream water. Myth yields again to practicality. Tides of real life demanded courage that looked small from a distance. Patching roofs, nursing fevers, gleaning fields, but glowed lunar bright when counted in dark hours. As the log settles to embers, you invite the circle to trade their own whispers. Agnes tells of a distant aunt who tricked a tax collector by baking coins into oak-hard bread. One lad speaks of an elder who outlived famine by teaching children to trap river eels with woven nets. Each legend arrives, dressed in humor and hush, yet tucked inside beats a pulse of instruction. Adapt, share, observe. The room feels padded with that collected wisdom, soft as wool, strong as rope. Rain slackens, becoming a fine mist that brushes shutters like kindly fingertips. You note the relaxed shoulders, the softened eyes, and allow a corridor of silence to bloom. In that quiet, breaths lengthen, the hearth's crimson core pulses steady as a lullaby drum. Even the cottage cat, curled beneath the bench, surrenders a rumbling purr that stitches calm through the floorboards. You gather empty cups, stacking them with a muted clink, and draw the story circle to a close. One by one, guests rise, cloaks now merely cool, not soaked, pockets warmer for the memories they carry. At the door you press each palm with a sliver of dried apple, small sweetness to light their path home. When the latch falls, hush returns full, draping itself over embers and bedding alike. You linger by the hearthstone, letting palms hover just above the heat, recalling every spark of courage shared tonight. Outside, clouds thin. A lone star peers through, tiny and vigilant. Tomorrow's tasks gather at the edge of thought, spindle, ledger, dawn water. But now you steep in the glow of stories, still circling like shy fireflies. Somewhere deep in the cottage, bread and roof, grain and child, all rest beneath the quiet armor of lessons spoken, waiting for morning bread to rise and words to kindle again. The last ember sighs behind the grate, its glow slipping like honey down a spoon, pooling in soft orange puddles along the hearthstone. Lamplight wanes to a muted halo, casting gentle ripples that seem to breathe with you. Expand, contract, quieten. Outside, rain thins to a lull of silver threads, sewing night together with the faintest rustle. Inside, every corner grows plush with dusk, the air itself velvety and slow, inviting restless thoughts to loosen their laces. Set the day's weight beside the door, as you might rest a bucket after the stream path. Let neck muscles lengthen, easing like rope slackened from a well pulley. Feel the small spaces between ribs widen, each breath drifting deeper into cedar-scented hush. Hands unclasp, fingers warm in the afterglow of labor, tingling with remembered wool and grain, yet content to be still. The cottage listens with you. Rafters creak once, then settle. Floorboards, offering a gentle hush, no louder than moth wings. Somewhere beyond shutters, an owl trades one measured note with a distant echo, then folds its question into feathers. That single call hangs a while, then dissolves, leaving the night smoother than pond water under starlight. Picture the bread you shaped at midnight, cooled now to quiet gold, resting beneath linen like a dream already fulfilled. Imagine the herbs, corked safe, waiting to defend tomorrow with their bottled meadow light. Sense the patched roof, holding rain at proper distance, straw seams tight as clasped fingers in prayer. Each memory wears soft edges, wrapped in calm, proof that the day's small victories stand watch while you drift. Now invite warmth along your spine, ember heat, traveling upward, drawing each vertebra into gentle alignment. Let shoulders sink toward the comfort beneath, a silent promise that nothing urgent remains. Breath steadies to match the cottage's pulse, slow, even, unhurried, until you and the walls share one quiet rhythm. Listen, the rain hush diminishes, replaced by the faint, contented tick of cooling iron. Eyes grow heavier, lids folding like parchment at day's end. With every exhale, release another thread of chatter, names, numbers, weather rumors, until only a hush of wool-soft silence lingers. Thoughts stray toward barley fields under moonlight, but the image fades to mist, leaving calm more vivid than any picture. You are small, safe, wrapped in night's gentle chambers, guarded by roof, hearth, and the quiet achievements of steady hands. The lamp flickers once, a slow curtain call, then stills. Darkness gathers, not as void, but as velvet cloak, warm against cheek and brow. Breath deepens again, slower, each draw a lull, each release a longer surrender. Outside, clouds drift apart, revealing one careful star that blinks, then holds steady, keeping watch until dawn. Let that starful hush carry you beyond counting, beyond stories, beyond the circle of firelight. Trust the embers to cradle the last whispers of the tale. Trust the grain beneath floorboards to remember sunlight for you. Nothing now asks for effort. Even dreams will tread lightly, feather-footed over the threshold of sleep. Loose the final tether of waking, drift as flower dust in still air, settle upon the soft promise of rest. Sleep well, history never rests, but you should. Screen dims to ember-soft glow. A lone candle stub tracing warm halos around your resting silhouette. Text drifts upward like gentle smoke. Choose your next quiet journey whenever you wake. 2 thumbnails float in, mild as moths. One leads to herb garden cures, the other to a moonlit tale of castle scribes. No hurry, they will wait, patient as bread cooling on the sill. If these hushed histories soothed you, brush a silent tap on the glowing icons, like subscribe, or the soft bell that summons new night stories. Leave a wordless dot in the comments. If words feel too loud, I'll know you passed this way. For now, close your eyes, let the candle wink out, and drift deeper. Sleep well. History never rests, but you should. Good night. Take care.